Okay, this is a video comparison between the FiiO FH5 and the NCM5, which is a company from Vietnam. They're known to some people, they're not as well known as others. I think it's a good comparison. The FH5 actually, I believe, has 4 drivers. It's called the Phi, but it's got 4 drivers. The NCM5 V2 is also a single dynamic drive, but I believe it has 4 balanced armatures, while this has 3. So they're slightly different, but in price range, they're fairly close. And this one has custom, you can see it says Bad Boy on the shell, and you can pick the colors, and there's within $100, these two right here, so they're a good comparison. The music that I'm listening to, let me see if I can get out of here. I'm using the DX150 that I've been using a lot recently. These are the test tracks that I use. Time in a Bottle. I don't know if you know this song. Time in a Bottle is a very, very slow song. And it's pretty much a guitar and a vocalist sitting on a stool close to the mic, Jim Croce. And time in, if I could save time in a bottle. And there's a guitar going on in the background. On the FH5s, because of the way that it's tuned and it's got the big bump, this sounds very forward and would require me to use EQ if I were to say, okay, I'm going to use the FH5. These are going to be regular. I'm going to take these with me, like let's say for a trip, which they would be fine because they're very comfortable. The hooks are very nice, so the build quality is absolutely fantastic. Build quality between the two of these, I would definitely pick the FH5 because they're beautiful and they're built really, really well. But if I were to take these on a trip with me, I would have to make a EQ adjustment before doing so, or I might have one preset. So I would have to make considerations. And what's the DAP I'm using? Different EQs. That's a consideration that I'm going to have to use or make before I take these with me. The NCM5 V2s are not like that. This song sounds great. It's got the vocals in the middle, and they are the main in the master, but they're not too close. Everybody pretty much has agreed that the Achilles heel for some, and just a minor weak point for others, that these have forward vocals. People say particularly female. I'm finding male, because I listen to male more, to be more of the issue. Depends on your library, I would suppose. These are tuned really, really well, and the more I listen to other hybrids, the more I appreciate. Neither of these are anywhere near the level of something like Empire Ears Legend X. I also have the Bravado coming in, so I'll be doing a video about that, and that's a hybrid, but that's not really price-wise in the same range of this. So if you like hybrids, and some people don't, they like single dynamic because they're purists, old school. There are other people that like multiple BAs, 6, 8, 10, 12, or more BAs per side, and they like that sound. That's their thing. And hybrids are the last to come along that have really started to come into their own, because the cohesive connection of the dynamic driver and the balanced armatures was not something that was like an automatic, and you just put them in the shells and let them do their thing, and they don't sound really good. Musical information sometimes sounds actually lost. So early hybrids really weren't options for audiophiles, but in the recent years, past 2, 3 especially, some of the better IEMs on the market are actually hybrids, the Legend being one of those. The Tia Forte, I believe that those are combo, if I'm not mistaken, of a dynamic and 1 or 2 balance. I'm not sure, but I believe that the top of the line 64 is also a hybrid. Might be mistaken there, but they've reached that level now. The bass impact of the NCM5 V2s. What track am I on here now? Want to be starting something? Okay, Michael Jackson. One of the better mixed. One of the more popular, if not the most popular album in history, and it was mixed absolutely fantastic. The arrangement of the songs. This is the first song on the album. This is a DSD. Impact on the NCM5 V2s is more sub bass focused, but the peak around 60 hertz is clearly higher than on the FH5. FH5 has a decent bass. I got the screens off, but it's more impactful here. The vocals on this track, let me get into another test track. Does this one slide like that? Led Zeppelin, Days of Confused. That would be bass. Let me get out of here. This would be a better one. Since I've Been Loving You, same group, Led Zeppelin. Down, 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 dun, dun, and it's very slow, it's very methodical. All four members come in at their own moment, and they give each other space musically. It's a very good song to listen to when you're evaluating music gear. I guess the songs that you like are the songs that are good for evaluating musical gear. I think that you would want to use the same ones repeatedly so that you have kind of a baseline. Listening to a song like this, again, the vocal forwardness of Robert Plant that is not normally present when you listen to this in almost any other configuration, whether it be a car audio system that is not tuned in any particular way. If you were just to put it together, Robert Plant, unless the tweeters were right in front of you on the dashboard, you might not think about it. Generally speaking, all four of these instruments, with maybe Jimmy Page being more sounding in the master like he's the main, because the guitar riffs in this track are pretty amazing. But again, John Bonham comes in with the drums, and so they all kind of take their moment in this song, with Robert Plant slowly building up to being the boss of the song and the vocals. But on the FH5s, he sounds in there all the time, instead of in the background moving slowly forward as the song progresses. On the NCM5s, it sounds like I've pretty much always heard it, with lots of good detail. It's got good bass. The mids, where part of Robert Plant's vocals are, sound normal, not forward. Normal is what? It depends on your taste. I would suppose that these would be a tad forward, but not in the sense that these would be. I don't like recessed mids because I don't like vocals sounding distant on all of my tracks, so I wouldn't like that. So on the Led Zeppelin track, this is showing Robert Plant being a little more forward than I would expect him to be. When you listen to music a lot, and you listen to the same music, things jump out at you right away. The missing sound of that there's maybe two guitars going on, but in fact, your playback sounds like one. So there sounds like there's maybe something missing. Let me give you an example of that. God help me, the DX150, I love it. But this is No More, No More by Aerosmith. This is a DSD. There's a part in this where Steve Perry, the guitarist, dun 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 dun. It almost sounds like, maybe it's via reverb, that there's sometimes like two guitars going in, and what they might have done in the studio is actually mix that in, because there sounds like there's sometimes two notes coming in addition to what he's doing clearly, which is mastered above what's behind it. If I listen to the FH5s, I can hear the song really well. If I listen to this song with the NCM5 V2s, I get that sense that there's a second guitar in the master. Maybe he laid down a track and then he laid down the main track and they just layered it one over the other in the studio, which wouldn't be odd at all. That's sometimes the little details that you can pick up, which is beyond the instruments that are listed as being present in the track. Sometimes they'll mix other stuff in. This seems to pick up the background mixes better than the FH5, and that would be a result of the impact of having an elevated 2K to the sense that this does, between 2, 3, is that it's going to mask a lot of stuff. The impact of the bass can sometimes be overwhelmed by the vocals. The details in the range between 1 and 4K can be lost or blown out because of where the peak on this set is. this is not giving me that. All of the micro details that I would hear in this song. And people talk about DSDs, do they have value? I note particularly in the treble, and some people say, well, they're louder. Whatever. This is like a 500 megabyte file. It's got a ton of information on it. If there's any enhancement, it would sound like it's in the treble. When I listen to that on both of these, I can hear that on this set, but I can't hear that on this set. That would be a side effect of where that bump is. Go back. Boston, Foreplay. It's been such a long time. This is that wide, spacey, digital raindrops that goes on if you've ever heard the song. These have a good sense of space. I wouldn't put them on something like EX1000 or like one of the planers like the ME1s or some of the stuff that just sounds borderline too wide. I actually don't mind that. EX1000s are my reference, and they're very wide playback. ME900s, my favorite open backs. They're super wide playback, 70 millimeter open back. I like wide stages. This sounds good. If someone said I'm a stage head, would these be okay? I would probably say, if open live performances are what you're always into, like that's a big part of your library, maybe not. These are fine. Then I don't ever listen to them and think this feels slightly compacted sometimes. But I also don't think, wow, that sounds amazingly spatial on something like this track. I do note on the FH5s that this does sound intimate. And intimate is a nice, reviewer hyper's way of saying closed. This definitely sounds like a set that is narrow, and that is related to the bump. This goes to show you how tuning is it can be a crippler for a set. Is this set crippled? No. Is there a lack of enthusiasm amongst some for this set? Yes. Why? Because of that bump and where it's placed. It wasn't the best tuning that they've ever done. Because it goes all the way back to the bass and having a masking effect, and obviously where it's positioned, it's going to maybe affect the treble, depending on your hearing ability, depending on the song that you're listening to. I lack sparkle on this most of the time. I don't seem to lack it at all, and this would be a track that would have a lot of treble sparkle. I get the sense of space with this. I don't get the sense of space with this. Now beyond, so this has better bass in my opinion. It's clear, it's tight, it's punchy. This is better than I thought originally when I first did my first video. I took the screen off, I've gotten used to it. I think it's got good bass. It looks bigger than it measures on the graphs that I've seen either done by Bruco, by FiiO themselves. I've not seen any graphs that note like a big ascent, plateau, and descent at a point where I think, oh, that's where that is. This doesn't really reflect that in graphs, but it does in fact have good bass. So it might be down to the housing, it might be down to volume. It's not lacking in bass at all. Neither of these two items are lacking in bass. But I would pick this as having a tighter, more punchy, more centered around 60 hertz, 55, than this set. Wherever the peak is between the two, I would say this would be closer to 55, where a lot of kick drum punch and a lot of bass impact needs to be elevated here to get its full boom without the bloom, which is occurring if it's later, going off beyond 100 hertz where it starts to tail off. I'd say the bass is better on these. The mid-range, I would say clearly this whole video has been talking about the mid-range of these not being that great. Early treble, late mids, and these are fine. These sound great compared to that. In general, I would say these are really good. The treble, these have sparkle like the big brother, big sister Bella, which is why I picked these. I paid for these, by the way, so if you think, why are you talking about a company that most of us have never heard of? Because they're close in price, because they're both hybrids, because they're only separated by a single balanced armature driver, because you can get a custom cap and choose the color, which is something that FiiO is going to maybe start eventually doing, making it more personalized. This company is already doing that, and I think they've got a better set of ears. They're tuning their stuff better. The bellow is fucking ridiculously good, and this is just like that, but not nearly as expensive. So I would recommend that you take a look at the company, NCM. The V5, the NCM5 V2 is exactly what set this is. I like them a lot. On the 3, the only place where FiiO would exceed these would be build quality, and these are just regular build quality. They're like a resin shell with a plastic cap, that's what the $2,300 Legend is also. That's what most of them are. These are actually like metal shell, and they're beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful. They sound good. I do like them, but they've got weaknesses, and it seems like some people are talking about them, but kind of moving along from that and then getting to what's great about them. If I had to pick between the two of these, I would pick the NCM5 V2s and customize it and get the color. Get a red on the left, get a red on the right, get a blue on the left, shell with a different cap, which is what I might end up doing because this didn't come out the way that I wanted it to. But that's my fault because I sent them the graphic. So I'm going to probably get my shells redone and also get another cable for this. FiiO is going to release a FH7, I believe, and adjust the tuning or not. I don't think that they did really. I think they missed a chance. Their graph, it's important to note that the graph that they publicized for this set and the graphs that have been measured by 2 people that I know of are both showing a pronounced Mount Everest around 2, which is an issue. And FiiO's own showed more stability until it got to the 5, 6, 7, I believe it was. It kind of looked like it plateaued. Let me see. Hold on a second. Never walk away when you're doing a video. It's absolutely unprofessional. You should be ashamed of yourself, etc., etc. This is actually the graph that was released about the FH5 by FiiO. And as you can see, the 2K bump is there, but it does not look in this graph visually as it relates to 1K, which dips slightly, then goes to 2K. And then we've got a plateau at about 6, 7, 8, drops at 9. This looks a little different than what other people are measuring. So take that into mind when you're looking at graphs. So does FiiO know how to do measurements? I'm absolutely sure they do. Do the other people that do reviews, do they know how to? I'm sure they do. There's variation between this and those. There shouldn't be, actually, because they're doing the same set. If they're doing it in the same way, which they should be doing if they can, these shouldn't look so different. Looking at this, looks like it would have an issue lacking some sparkle detail, maybe because of how far and how fast this drops off. In fact, other people are showing elevated at 2, 2.53, substantially more than what this looks like. And I would tend to lean towards the accuracy of the other people's graph more than FiiO's, because that forward mids and the masking of the bass and the sometimes covering of the sparkle and the treble is all coming down to that bump, which is right here. But if you look on their website or wherever this graph is now, this doesn't look like that would be much of an issue at all. That looks like relative to what's preceding it, what follows it, not that much of a bump. The way it's being measured by other people now. And I normally would go with this and not what other people are doing, but my ears are telling me that the other people are probably more accurate. So that doesn't really look like what I'm hearing.